Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Smart Cities Chronicles, our podcast. But also, this is doubling up as a video episode on our Digital Twin TV on our YouTube channel. My name is Adam Beck. I'm Executive Director of the Smart Cities Council for Australia and New Zealand, and delighted to assemble a number of friends today to do a bit of a real-time debrief on Digital Twin Week. Digital Twin Week was our series of 12 events that were running last week being 19th to the 23rd of October 2020, and a whole range of different sessions that were hosted, facilitated, some very engaging, some sit back and listen, international guests, regional, local guests. So looking forward to getting the views of our Digital Twin Task Force members that we have with us today. And with us, we've got Kate Williams from FrontierSI, Julian Watts from KPMG, Gavin Cotterill from PCSG, and Kat Salm from FrontierSI and Aurecon. Thanks everyone for joining us for a bit of a debrief.
I could tell.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
So, friends, let's start with a little bit of a kick-off overview, minute or two, high level, what you sort of observed, what you thought, what you heard, what your takeaway was from Digital Twin Week 2020. Kate Williams, let's start with you. You were involved in the opening State of the Nation sort of plenary session. What can you share with us? 2 minutes. What would you like to share?
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, just reflecting when I was preparing for that session and during that session and since that session on the year between the first Digital Twin Symposium and the week that we just had. There's a lot of great case studies. We saw more case studies in Digital Twin Week. Obviously, we had more time, but we saw some international ones, and we saw where some of those pilots and projects were up to. I suppose I was, as a technical person, that's always the bit that I like the best. But in the session the first session I was in, the State of the Nation, and then the last session where we went through the strategy, I suppose a bit of reflection, there's still a long way to go around all of the people governance issues that wrap around digital twins. And I thought I really had some thought-provoking discussions about that aspect. The technical stuff's important and great, but I think working through that week and with the people on the strategy that the Smart Cities Council is working on, I think is going to be a great outcome and really will take us, in the year ahead a lot far further.
Yeah, excellent. Kate, thanks for sharing. Julian, over to you. What were your observations?
Adam, look, I just think I was so excited to have a whole week worth of digital twin goodness. We had all you could eat. You could drop in, drop out, check in and see all of the good things that people have been doing. The sort of big movement where we've now got such a large variety of case studies where people aren't just approaching digital twin with one lens. They're saying, how can I apply digital to everything that I do? How can I then turn that into something that other people can use? And how can we learn on what the challenges are that's in front of us? I think there was this really interesting difference between what's happening in the US and what's happening in the UK, with the US being much more around the operational side of simulation, trying to run multiple simulations, the use of operational technology to make it real from that side. The UK obviously having a lot more lineage in the BIM and making sure that from the front end of the life cycle, we've got the right data coming through to be used through operations. But really excited to see the launch of the new the BIM upskilling platform, which I was involved in the early version of that a few years ago. So excited to see that one come through. But also, the amount of really good things bubbling through, pun intended, in the water sector, the amount of things that Sydney Water are doing, the way that they're designing around providing an open data sharing, the use of ontologies to decide how to share information across agencies. So yeah, just really exciting movements that we've got.
Yeah, certainly share some of those sentiments, Julian. Gavin, what did you observe? What can you share with us?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So
I think really building upon from last year, where we had the symposium, the day was split up into two parts, where we had a sort of a state of the nation. The ANZLIC principles was launched. The state governments launched in terms of provide context of their own programs of local governments. And then the afternoon was a fantastic sort of strategic session, which really built upon, really developed really from this year's session. So I've got 6 key sort of points that I've taken from the week. A lot of interest, new faces, which I think is fantastic, and part of what the council's role is to build a thriving marketplace. New areas of the life cycle coming in, a lot of AI, machine learning, a lot of data initiatives, and it's not necessarily just the spatial and the 3D geometry mafia in place, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, of course. I think also a bit about what it is and what it isn't. I think that's really interesting that people are still working out what this is and what it means to them. We see that the spatial community is really leading the way here with that leadership, with the relevant state government perspective. I think I want to touch on the Queensland Rail example that we're lucky enough to work with, and it's moving more into that predictive maintenance. And I think that's where we're going to see the opportunity in terms of driving value and supporting better decision making by connecting and integrating, visualizing and analyzing different data sets from a capability perspective. I've got here as well, I think just touching on with our session with the infrastructure with HS2 and Highways England, and really seeing the two journeys, and Julian mentioned the sort of HS2 coming from that new build, wanting to get data, good quality data up front as part of the build. But then in terms of Highways England, we're just sweating an asset more with their smart motorways program and really looking to get data to support better decision making from their perspective. So I thought that was really interesting. But there was 2 further points that with both the presentations, there was one around business case, getting the business case up to do this. Like it's a substantial work in integrating, connecting a variety of different data sets. And I thought that was hugely challenging, and it's really interesting that the business case process. And I think a real lesson for us to learn, you can't just implement tech. You need to understand the why, what, how, and take through that due diligence of a business case. But I think that the big point is around getting that executive support. And what I mean by that is very much at the moment, it's still very much a technical narrative digital twin. And if we are going to underpin strategic themes and align our policy to our interventions, we're going to need to get executive support. And I think that's something we've really got to focus on moving forward, is how do we move the digital twin narrative from a technical narrative to a real commercial strategic narrative.
Yeah, excellent. Gavin, thanks for sharing. Kat, lucky last, what would you say were your highlights and key observations for the week?
So for me, I think it was the variety that was on display during the week. I've always thought that the real benefits of digital twin come from collaboration rather than people working separately. So for me, just that range of people that were involved and the range of presentations not only shows the range of interest, but also the impact and the variety that we have in this space, including, of course, the engagement with the international participants, which I think is great because it gives us such a good broad view. For me as well, I think one of the takeaways was that it's about people as well. We've all sort of said it's not just the technology, but for me, the people aspect is really critical in this. And also the outcomes that we get from it. So it's not just, again, about the technology, but the sustainability, the well-being, the resilience that we can improve by the use of digital twins. Awareness raising as well. So for me, it was helping me to understand the different perspectives and approaches that people have to digital twin, and allows me to sort of question my approaches and whether I'm considering the bigger picture or the full picture and how we can better work together as well. So yeah, I thought it was great. It helps again to further our vision and direction for digital twins in the Australia-New Zealand setting and moving us forward, and also really just helping that understanding of how we all fit into that bigger ecosystem of digital twin.
Yeah, Kat, I want to build off that last point there you made around sort of, how we fit into that broader ecosystem. Can I ask all of you the same question here? We had an element of the US and the UK, being showcased somewhat. How are you feeling in terms of Australia's position and opportunity globally, as a sort of a global marketplace around digital twin, the smarts that we have, the people that we have, the case studies and the pilots, the questions we're asking, the level of inquiry that we're making, the level of sort of community building that we're doing. I know you're all going to be biased, but as impartial as possible, did you come away feeling that this agenda digital twin could be a significant opportunity for Australia globally in terms of policy making, practice, export opportunity? Where do you think we fit globally? Kate, let's jump up to you. We'll start with you.
Yeah, look, I am really positive about that question. One of the people who was involved in the strategy session, the little part that I ran on Friday, was working in Saudi Arabia virtually, living in Canada.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, this event that we're running here in Australia, New Zealand, has got a global audience. It did. I don't know how many people from international came, Adam, but the thinking and the talking that our group had really was, where he was at in Canada and thinking, and what the companies and countries that he's working in are thinking as well. So, we've obviously got Centre for Digital Built Britain as a bit of a light on the hill. But I think that we do have a very vibrant community building that we can only hope that will take us somewhere like really quickly. And I think that we are particularly a country that will benefit from this type of technology. And there is, Gavin, you spoke about executive buy-in. One of the things that I like about digital twins is it doesn't actually take much to get high-level buy-in for digital twins. That's coming, that's there. We also have got a huge amount of really technically capable people, and Kat would know we in FrontierSI work a lot with the higher education sector, and there are some fantastic world-class researchers and projects going on here in Australia that will, be churning out amazing graduates to work on it. So I think, FrontierSI and the spatial industry, or the spatial mafia, as they're sometimes called, we are extremely buoyant about this and see a huge potential for us to have global impact, but also to make our skill set more, as Kat said, impactful across the whole economy.
Yeah, great points, Kate. Julian, over to you on this one. And I love this sort of little group we've got here, because our relevant perspectives and what we bring to the digital twin conversation are sort of different. How do you respond to that one, Julian?
I'd have to agree with Kate that digital twins has definitely got the sex appeal, right? It's an easy conversation to be had. Everyone wants a piece of it. I kind of look around and my colleagues that are working overseas that I work with have that sort of view about we're doing the strategy without the doing. And I feel like in Australia, we're probably doing a lot of the doing without the strategy in some sense. And that, a couple of the ones we've got, Centre for Digital Built Britain, we've got the Digital Twin Consortium spun up in the US, are really focused on let's get ourselves organized and let's get that export opportunity from the ground up. And I think we've got a long way to go, to be honest. I think we kind of have, it's not infighting, but it's everyone trying to do their own thing without a coordinated way that means that we can all benefit from it. And as part of that connected strategy, we actually need to think, from the ground up, is this an export opportunity? Do we want it to be an export opportunity? And make a very thoughtful approach around that. And I think we've got an amazing amount of great ideas. The strategy that we're putting together with Smart Cities Council is going to take us a long way there. But I think we need to keep the pedal down and sort of not just rest on our laurels, that we have great case studies and actually just think, how are we going to do this? What do we want the end goal to look like?
Yeah, no, great points again. Thanks, Julian. Gavin, over to you. Your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. What's going on in the UK, excuse me, is really coming from a bottom up by doing. So if you look at Anglian Water, Highways England, HS2, there's a whole raft of really smart stuff that's going on in industry and actually supporting their own policy and their own strategic themes. The role of Centre of Digital Britain is to coordinate. I use that word that Julian says there, that they are looking to enable consistency, to enable capacity and capability building within there. Centre of Digital Britain is not to build a national digital twin. It's about a set of federated set of twins that come from utilities, infrastructure, spatial, etc. It's about connecting them to support better decision making. So they're creating a framework. We're unfortunately not there in that space. We've got different levels of maturity. We're seeing that the spatial community is really a leadership perspective here, but we're seeing pockets of excellence. We've talked about Sydney Water, and we've talked about other clients. So I think at the moment we're still in that sort of we need to be better coordinated. We're a low population in terms of, we've got some brilliant people here that's unrivaled, just the same as in the UK. I just think in terms of what we're missing at the moment is that sort of leadership coordination perspective. We can't afford to do these digital twin 5-6 times. We can't afford to do that with the amount of people we have and the challenges that we have. We have to think about how we can do that and coordinate that. And that can't be a hobby task. And what I mean by that, it can't be, hey, it's a good idea from Vic, SA, New South Wales, Queensland. There's got to be some sort of level of framework that we do things consistently, as opposed to reinventing the wheel. So I think that there's a huge opportunity, but from an export perspective, I think there needs to be greater leadership taken and understanding what that is and what that means moving forward. There's a real reason why China and the UK are really driving the standards marketplace, and that's something we can really learn from to help build that capacity and capability.
Yeah, okay, interesting points, Gavin. We'll pick up on some of those, no doubt, in our discussion about the workshop. Kat, over to you, and I'll ask you, Kat. I mean, you're sort of the New Zealand rep here. You're in country. What are your sort of views on this question from a New Zealand perspective? Where do you feel that you're at capability policy wise, based on what you heard internationally as well last week?
I agree with Gavin. I think we're on a maturity journey at the moment, and I don't think we're quite there yet. I think there is a great opportunity for export in the future, but I think for us, a real focus should be around where we bring unique value to that export opportunity. So, in New Zealand, for example, there's a lot of work going on for digital twins in the resilience area, natural disaster sort of area, and I think that's something that we have a lot of knowledge on generally, but can bring that perspective and that insight to digital twin more broadly. The same, for example, in things like farming here or potentially mining in Australia as well. It's areas that we have real strengths in already, and that our knowledge and our expertise as we grow and develop our maturity can actually give us a really unique edge globally in terms of that export market. I think we also, personally, I think we're quite lucky in New Zealand anyway, and that was small, and we don't have a lot of the bureaucracy and structures that other countries do. So for us, innovation is a big driver, and it's a lot more reachable, I suppose, as we go. And for me as well, that innovation often happens in the space where we connect across. So for us, our spatial, as Gavin was saying again, that the underpinning of spatial, or the leadership of spatial, our spatial industry is strong, but also, very well connected, I think, here. So the ability to work across that is great. And I think that also gives us quite a good advantage and opportunity out of New Zealand. But at the same time, I think we're we're really keen on approaching this as a region as well. So not just New Zealand and Australia, but as the ANZ region, because I think there's a great deal of benefit to be had from working across.
Yeah, Kat, that's a brilliant point. I mean, I've been very open and transparent at times, saying that I have a huge policy crush on New Zealand. Not only with some of your cities that are doing incredible work, like Wellington, for example, and also Christchurch, but also at a national government level with I think it's your TIPs or the industry transformation plans. At a national level, 3 or 4 key transformation areas that you're sort of leading nationally, putting dollars behind it. And also, I've come to learn more and more the role of the academic sector and universities, and big buckets of money that enable great work to be done. So yes, I'm thoroughly looking forward to seeing if we can, even just in our region here, sort of learn from each other. And I'm sure across both countries we've potentially got the great the great bits of all the things that we need, and it's just a matter of stitching that together. So thank you for that, friends. Let's pivot our conversation now and talk about the workshop on Friday. So here we have a Google Doc that is currently sitting at, I don't know what it is, I've got it in front of me here, a number of pages, 30 pages. We've been working it up across a whole bunch of really good people. Our task force has been working on it and sort of built the straw man structure and sort of table of contents, and we've had other additional committee editorial sort of friends come into the fold. And then last Friday, we put the open call out, and we had a whole bunch of friends, new faces, as we've said, some of course familiar faces as well join. We split the document up a bit. We had four sort of breakout sessions. We had sort of policy and governance, and Kate, you were on that. Julian, you tackled this idea of how do we build a pipeline? Let's get some projects sort of in a pipeline queued up. Gavin, you tackled the good old standards piece, which is always an interesting one. And then Kat, you tackled sort of that research, development, education, and sort of professional practice. So we had a good go at it. Let's sort of give a little bit of a debrief. Again, a couple of minutes each. Gavin, going to jump straight to standards. Let's get that one over and done with. It's often the one that is quite brain hemorrhaging at times. What came out of your deep dive session? Were there any clear opportunities or recommendations on the standards front?
Yeah, we had a real interesting discussion. We actually brought it right back about why we need standards. So there was different maturities in the team, and really to help that set that context, why do we need standards? We provided a bit of a current state in terms of there's heaps of standards already available. So data standards around building information modeling, geospatial, IoT, strategic standards, process standards. There's a whole raft of different standards. We've got the principles from ANZLIC. So we don't have a problem with standards. We just have a problem in terms of being utilised within the marketplace. So we see a low adoption rate by asset owners in terms of procuring good quality data. So that was talked about. I think we also then sort of, obviously there's no digital twin standard at the moment in terms of it's currently in production at the moment, which we're a part of that for Standards Australia working group. But I think that there was a real need that we don't necessarily need to focus on technical standards, but we really need to get a strategic standard in place to help provide some consistency in the marketplace on what it is or what it isn't, but really to provide that sort of consistency so people can start to hang their hat on that, so we can get a good level of consistency. But I think we also highlighted that there's a whole raft of smart city standards available that not many people know about them. So how do we actually communicate and align that to that? We also touched upon that there's similar work that's going on in other parts of the world. So Centre of Digital Britain are about to release their Smart City Standards Roadmap.
Digital Twin Standards Roadmap?
Yeah, so they're agile standards and really about thinking about, well, let's take stock, let's do a gap analysis, let's understand what that means for us, and what do we need to think about that's not covered on there, but really use that as a point to bring together and propose an approach in terms of help provide some context about what standards can do to help provide consistency and capability and capacity in the marketplace.
Yeah, okay. A quick question for you, Gavin. On sort of definition and scope, right, which can kind of fall under standards at times. I mean, you know, it's not uncommon that we'll see out there in the marketplace a good static digital model of a building that's got digital twin written all over it, or some fantastic video footage of a visualization with digital twin sort of, you know, branded on it. Was there any conversation about where we're at with the idea? Like, are we all kind of on the same page with what a digital twin is? I mean, was there any element of that conversation going on, or is that we don't need to have that conversation?
No, I think it's a fair point. Definitely there is. There's not necessarily a consistent view, and as I made the observation at the start of the session, it's still quite sort of CapEx, capital delivery, in that spatial 3D geometry perspective. So I think it comes back to understanding what those use cases are. So what is a use case from a planning perspective, from a design, construction, operations, maintenance, and ultimately what in terms of service delivery. So I still think we've got a long way to go, because unfortunately various different stakeholders in the market will profess to have a digital twin. So whether you're a technology vendor, whether you're a consultant, the term digital twin is being paraded under many different guises. So getting those standards to help provide that consistency, I think is only a good thing. Yeah.
Kat, I'd like to turn to you now and your deep dive group. Your colleague Kerry Niven from Aurecon ran a fantastic session on Thursday morning last week around, it was like digital twin maturity. Is it an issue about technology or people? And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and hearing those real life experiences from Auckland Airport, from New Zealand Transport Agency, how their digital twin journeys have been very messy, you know, not necessarily planned at times. They didn't go and buy one. You know, it's been part discovery and exploratory, data's at the heart of it, but of course, change management, cultural management, you know, the whole people, different skills, interpretations. This is certainly, you know, probably, I think we'll look back in 5 years and go, yeah, you know, it was all about people and it wasn't about the technology. That's what I'm predicting. So the sort of the capacity building, our skills, the R&D is a really important space. What came out of your sort of deep dive session?
So it was actually very much about what you were talking about. One of the key things that came out was around change management and how we manage the cultural change that's needed to support digital twin in organizations. So that's around the different ways of working, and one of our participants was talking about the socio-technical elements of it. So how do you that speaks to the impact that it has as well. But you know, how do we approach this new way and bring people along with us? So more than anything, in fact, I think that idea of awareness and managing change and bringing people along was really important. We talked about awareness across a lot of different stakeholders. I think, I mean, being from the spatial industry, we are always guilty of talking to ourselves about what needs to happen, but not actually, you know, talking to the people who need to understand to actually bring that change around. So we talked about people like project leaders and people at executive level, how we raise their awareness and knowledge, not just of the technology again, but actually what outcomes that brings for them and what impact that has. We also talked a bit about what capability already exists and how we connect that. So it's not about you come out as a digital twin person, but how do we bring the different elements together so that we're actually moving things forward collaboratively with all the bits of that puzzle that we need. There was also, again, with that, it was about integration and interoperability across sectors, across disciplines, but also different scales. So, you know, again, as we were saying, maybe, you know, there's parts in New Zealand cities, but then New Zealand is, but then our region as well. So how do we bring all these parts together? And then there was also discussion, again, coming back to that maturity and understanding of what we actually mean is how we really put something around that makes it easy for people to understand, but that also helps us to understand where the gaps are in capability and where the research needs to happen and where those spaces are that we need to fill. I'm trying to think if there was anything else significant in that. One aspect as well was where we bring in things like industry bodies to help support a lot of this stuff. So what is their role in terms of raising awareness across existing practitioners in this sort of general space? How do we encourage continuing professional development in this space, and then promote things like the standards that Gavin was talking about, you know, so that that's actually, you know, becomes best practice and feeds into digital twin, even if people don't think about it as being that necessarily. So yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, thanks, Kat. Julian, let's head to you. What was interesting during the breakout sessions is that I was sitting back and I had the Google Doc open in front of me, watching it sort of in real time build out. And I must say, your group around building a project pipeline got off the mark very quickly, and your sections of the strategy, we've got diagrams, we've got hyperlinks, we've got maturity models. You went fast and furious. There was a lot discussed. What can you share with us?
Adam, what we wanted to do was to try and trigger, you know, what are all of the parameters that people might want to tag a project against? So, you know, mentioned before about people not really pigeonholing a project to be is it or isn't it. We just want to know what are all of the projects out there that have a digital lens to them. And so we wanted to come up with lots of lists to say, how could you tag a project, and how could you then, through that tagging, identify other projects that might have similar types of characteristics. So we did do a fair bit of that brainstorm just to say, what are all of the lenses that we might need to look through? Do we want to look at who are the users? You know, what are the types of people that would be using this? What are the uses? Is it about simulation? Is it about optimization? Is it about you know, the type of data analytical approach that you could take to things? So we came up with a whole stack of these different types of lists, right? So how could we classify the type of twin that we had? What are the roles? How can we piece those twins together? Which led us down a path of saying, actually, we need some way of enabling organizations to define what they want to get, you know, what capabilities they need to put in place as well. So is it about the ability to join different types of twins together? Do they need capability internally in the organization to do that from a data integration perspective? What types of things need to be in place for them to share that data to other agencies, and how is that transfer and ownership going to work? We also looked at how do we trigger more excitement, and so whilst people might be doing a digital project, they might not naturally think of it as a digital twin. So how can we raise the profile further, leverage the people that have the loud voices, right? So we've got lots of politicians that want to talk about this. We've got lots of asset owners that want to talk about this. How can we make their voices louder to try and get the news out there further and actually generate a bit more snowball that way? We also thought about how do we trigger increase in a certain topic. So is there an opportunity to put things like a competition out there to say, there's one topic that we really want to nail, and we had the idea of, you know, the idea of an interface manager from a role perspective, and is there an opportunity to automate that role? So if we could get everyone to look at, well, what are the opportunities to automate a certain role and keep the human in the loop at the right time, but to basically, you know, crowdsource the answer on this. And if everyone's doing it, then does that leverage us forward to our point before about, is there an export opportunity here? How do we show what is the gold standard? And so I think we want to come up with a few lists like that we could actually put out there as being, these are real challenges or competition type approach to getting the uptick in capability across our asset owners, across all of the people that are actually using this.
There's a lot in there, and I must say the strategy document as it stands has some fantastic information that we now need to digest. Okay, well, let's totally change tack from building a project pipeline to policy and governance. And Kate, you were the champion that put your hand up for that group. What happened in your deep dive session around all things policy and governance and leadership?
Yeah, look, it's actually not too dissimilar from what some of the other people were talking about. We ended up talking a lot about people, who is going to provide leadership. We decided it's not enough to say, oh, we need to create a government body and that will solve all our problems. We spoke a lot about the role of, I suppose, government in providing social license to do things. So people like government involved because, if government is doing a digital twin, you might trust them with the data. It might, help you feel like it's not going to do evil. So government definitely has a really important role. But we also talked about, a little bit touching on what you were talking about, Gavin, which is the what is and what isn't a digital twin. We kind of think it doesn't matter. What we think leadership looks like in the digital twin space is more like digital transformation. It's more about saying we have a vision. This is what our region, our asset, our country will look like when we have this digital infrastructure there. But also there's a whole heap of people infrastructure that needs to sit around it to make that actually live and help you make better decisions. So we spoke about things like social license and how that works with digital twins. We spoke about having things like ethics committees that sit around a project. So all of these things that bring the people element and the trust element, because in the end, we're talking about infrastructure that can change people's lives, hopefully. Yes, it can change the way you operate an asset. You can have a better environmental outcome, but big picture wise, maybe we can all do more with less and all of those types of things. So we spoke about what that looks like and how that must include both the private and the public sector. It can't be either or. So there was a lot there, but we also spoke a lot about it has to be linked to international approaches. Coordinating with them or following what's being done overseas is not a bad thing. It doesn't mean we're doing something wrong. It's just part of having that broader approach to what we're talking about. But we also did talk about how digital twins do align with a lot of existing government policies, agendas, and business policies and business agendas. We do think that this technology can help you operate an asset more efficiently with better outcomes. So there's all the drivers are already there. It's just about linking what we're doing to that narrative. But we did also get down to some nitty-gritty tools or things that we think are missing around governance and leadership, and even things like basic government procurement models coming out of different levels of treasury that either stops things creating data that can be shared well or facilitates it. This is absolutely not my area of expertise, but the group was telling us, there will be issues to be solved around things like potential royalty or licensing models that may or may not be different to the ones that already exist. But I suppose in the end, we really felt that the leadership that we're looking for is around digital transformation leadership, and that if we're seeing that anywhere, we can slot underneath it, and the digital twin agenda just really supports it. We did talk about, we cannot have a digital twin discussion without talking about what's happening in the New South Wales government. We talked about the leadership around customer service and how digital twins can support that. That's just one part of the puzzle that digital twins can support. We say, where is the leadership that's showing digital twins can support economic viability or development of industries. So there is still room for digital transformation leadership across a whole heap of domains that will take the digital twin conversation forward.
Yeah, Kate, some brilliant points and observations there. I was actually on a phone call earlier today, and the name Victor Dominello was sort of raised again, and I did share that I don't think there's been an elected official, or someone at that level of sort of leadership that has spoken about digital twin more eloquently than Minister Victor Dominello, referring to it essentially as an economic reform platform. And so I think getting more of those existing leaders, and champions and spokespersons is going to be important for us. Okay, friends, we're at time. Okay, that was Digital Twin Week in a sort of a 40-minute debrief session. Can I get a thumbs up or thumbs down? Are we going to do Digital Twin Week next week? No pressure at all, but no, sorry,
Maybe
next year.
Yeah.
Sorry, next year. Are we going to do it next year? Yeah.
Two
okay.
thumbs.
Yeah,
All
two.
right.
Two thumbs. Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. Well, look, Kate, Gavin, Julian, Kat. A, thank you so much for taking some time out to do this debrief. B, thanks so much for your continued and ongoing support and commitment and involvement in not only our digital twin task force, but helping sort of co-create and shape that strategy. For our listeners, the Smart Cities Chronicles podcast, if you're not subscribing, you can do so. Head to any podcast platform that you prefer, you'll find it there. And also for our viewers watching the video, the Digital Twin Hub and our Digital Twin TV playlist has a whole heap of goodness on it, including all of the video recordings from Digital Twin Week 2020. So with that, going to bring this session to a close. Thank you again to our guests. For the digital twin enthusiasts out there listening and or watching, head to the Digital Twin Hub, digitaltwinhub.org. You'll find an opportunity there to subscribe to our updates and also connect with the community. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We look forward to bringing you more digital twin goodness, as it's become known, very soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.